This is the Commodore 64, one of the most iconic computers from the 80s. You can still have a lot of fun with it today, since people are still making software for it, and some of it's seriously good. Maybe you or your dad has one stashed away in the basement. If so, it's time to dig it out and enjoy this awesome machine all over again. In this video, I'll share some tips to get it back up and running, or show you some cool alternatives if you still don't have one. The first thing you should check is the power supply, since it's one of the most important components and also one of the most likely to fail over time. The early Commodore models came with power supplies made by Commodore itself, and those are known to have issues as they age. On the other hand, the ones made by Ismet tend to be much more reliable, but it's still a good idea to check them just in case. I recommend testing the power supply without plugging it into your Commodore, just to be safe. Locate the 5-volt pin on the power supply and take the measurement in DC mode. Usually the PSU will output a bit over 5 volts when it's not connected to the computer. Ideally, it shouldn't go much higher than 5.1 or 5.2 volts. If it's pushing 5.4 volts or more with no load, it could cause serious damage once you hook it up to your Commodore. Once you do connect it, the voltage should stay close to 5 volts under load. You can check this at pin 8 on the RAM-OM ICs. The exact max voltage for those chips should be listed in the manufacturer's datasheet. There are also modern alternatives to the original Commodore power supplies. These use voltage regulation and newer components that can help extend the life of your machine. Now that we've confirmed there's no issue with the power supply of our Commodore, we can enjoy the huge software library that's available. To do so, let's take a look at some loading media options we can use. Without a doubt, the most common peripheral is the tape drive. Surely every Commodore user has one, but there are more modern alternatives that allow us to access a much wider range of software. For example, this is the Tapuino, a device that allows us to load cassette images from an SD memory card. It works by connecting it to the cassette port of our Commodore and lets us load TAP files and some versions of the device, even create our own copies of our original tapes. Simply select the image you want to load, press play on the device, and it will be ready to start loading on your Commodore just as you've always done. The Tapuino lets you experience the original loading feel of many of the games you had on cassette during your childhood. It won't make the images load any faster, but you'll be able to enjoy the melodies and the colorful horizontal lines just as you did with your original tapes. Do you remember InvadaLoad? It was a loader that let you play a game while the main game was loading, and sometimes it was even more entertaining than the main game itself. On the Commodore 64, the wait for a tape to load was truly worth it. But if you come from the world of video game consoles or simply prefer instant program loading, you have the cartridge option. Kung Fu Flash is an excellent choice. It supports a wide range of formats and comes with a built-in menu. All you need is an SD memory card. Simply insert the cartridge, power on your Commodore, and the game will load instantly. When you want to load another game, just press the button on the cartridge to bring up the file selector, and you'll be able to switch games instantly. The disk drive is the star peripheral of the Commodore 64. The most widespread model is the Commodore 1541. Although it's not a particularly fast drive, there are solutions such as cartridges that can speed up disk access. Or, for a more compatible solution with protected programs, you can replace the ROM of both the drive and the Commodore 64. There are some really interesting alternatives to the disk drive. The first one I'm going to introduce is the SD2 IEC, a disk drive simulator that lets you load D64 images from an SD card. It also supports loading other formats such as PRG. This device can be used along with a file manager to navigate through your images stored on the SD card directly from the Commodore 64 itself. Very convenient. On the downside, the emulation works at the input-output level and doesn't behave like a true disk drive, so images of protected programs or certain fast loaders won't work properly. And now my personal favorite device, the PI-1541, a full disk drive emulator. The 1541 disk drive is practically a computer in itself, with its own CPU, RAM, and ROM. This device emulates all the components of the disk drive, matching the compatibility of a real unit. This option is a bit more expensive than the SD2 IEC because, in addition to the device itself, you'll also need a Raspberry Pi 0, 1, 2, or 3. This device is compatible with all kinds of disk images, D64, D81, G64, or NIB, which is the most suitable format for images of protected programs or those with custom loaders. Since it has its own integrated computer, we can connect the device to another screen and select the image we want to load from there, or we can use the built-in screen and buttons on the device itself. With everything we've covered so far, the Pi 1541 would be the best option for those seeking the highest fidelity compared to the original disk drives. The Tapuino would be its equivalent for cassettes, while the Kung Fu Flash is the choice for the new generation who aren't as concerned with authenticity but want fast loading times more akin to video game consoles. There are excellent alternatives to real hardware. Modern emulators have reached a very high level of accuracy, but I want to show you two particularly interesting options if you're looking to try something beyond a traditional emulator. This is the C64, also an emulator, but housed inside a fully functional standalone Commodore 64-style keyboard. This could be the preferred option for the most nostalgic Commodore 64 fans. The external appearance is truly impressive, faithful to the original Commodore 64, even in size, weight, and the feel of the keyboard. To control this computer, they've chosen the design of the legendary Competition Pro joystick, another remarkably faithful reproduction of the original design, with extra buttons added to access the computer's menu. One of the most appealing features of this computer is that it can emulate both a Commodore 64 or a Commodore VIC-20 from the same machine, with no configuration needed. Simply power it on, and you can access the pre-installed games from a graphical menu using the joystick, or load your own games or programs from a USB flash drive. But where this reproduction truly shines is in its fully functional keyboard, identical to that of the original Commodore 64. This means you can not only load and play games, but also write your own basic programs or even use the keyboard itself to play. The next alternative is a bit more sophisticated. The C64 is essentially an emulator running on a mini PC inside the keyboard. But there's another option that doesn't rely on software emulation. Instead, it works by reprogramming the logic gates of an integrated circuit to behave exactly as another processor would. These types of processors are known as FPGAs, and they're the foundation of the MiSTer project. The MiSTer project is capable of simulating multiple systems, not just the Commodore 64, but also the Commodore Amiga, the VIC-20, and more. While you'll have to settle for using a standard PC keyboard, it offers significant advantages. In addition to hardware-level simulation, you can connect it to a CRT display for a more authentic experience that stays true to the original machine. MiSTer is possibly the most expensive alternative to a real Commodore 64, but in addition to offering other cores to simulate different machines, it provides the most accurate and faithful simulation available today.
One, two, three, hit it. Outrun.
Are you keeping up with the Commodore?
The Commodore 64 is a key part of computing history. It marked the beginning of a generation of programmers, musicians, and artists who created some of the classic programs and games that would go on to inspire countless others up to the present day. I invite you to discover the huge catalog of those timeless classics, or to relive them if they were part of a chapter in your life. Today, new and impressive games and programs are still being created, or older ones are being modernized. A vibrant community continues to design new hardware and innovative solutions for this wonderful computer. Give the Commodore 64 the love it deserves. And you can also show the channel some love, subscribe if you like this content, and leave a comment. I'll be excited to read your thoughts and stories about this fantastic machine.